and available on
This
YouTube.
meeting is being recorded.
And available on YouTube afterward, and also an audio recording will may be distributed on some low power FM radio stations. So we are going to start. Welcome everyone. Bienvenidos a todos. I'm M. Ward from the Green Party of New Mexico. Missouri Greens and Green Party of St. Louis are behind the scenes, working to make sure things run smoothly. Laura Filla, Joe Civettini, Don Fitz, Chris Brosina, James Anala, Courtney Hadra, and Barb Chiquirio is the timekeeper. Special mention regarding graphics and their distribution, Courtney Hadra, David Doonan, Jill Stein, and Elena Acosta. And thanks to all of the co-sponsoring state parties, caucuses, and communities, and those who helped get the word out about this webinar. Lili Benavides, Latinx Caucus, will provide any needed translation during the Q&A. Feel free to write in Spanish in the chat. So this is an informational program intended to provide background and resources for those of us who care about the dignified treatment of all peoples. While there will be much emphasis on the southern border tonight, please remember that any immigrant group from any part of the world can become a target at any time. We have seen this before and likely will again. As many in the southwestern US say, we didn't cross the border crossed us. Prior to the arrival of Europeans with their guns, many indigenous pueblos and tribes inhabited these continents now known as the Americas. Panelists will have 10 minutes for their presentations. A 1-minute advisory will be given, and I'll now make the opening introductions. Our co-moderator this evening is María Elena Valdivia. She is the Executive Director of Migrants and Minorities Alliance and co-founder of Luces y Sombras Migrantes. She lives in Florida and has been working for workers' rights and building coalitions across the country and across borders for more than 20 years. Draco Wanderlust specializes in business administration and logistics and is dedicated to fair and equitable immigration reform. He has worked to defend the rights of migrants, promoting initiatives that seek legalization and the protection of minority communities. He has collaborated in organizing political and social strategies to amplify the voice of immigrants within the political system. Gabby Eissner is the convener of the Missouri Immigration Policy Coalition in St. Louis, Missouri. She holds a master's of social work and advocates for the human rights of immigrants and refugees, providing resources to those in need and monitoring state and local legislation. She has been working in the immigrant rights movement for 9 years. Draco, the floor is yours.
Draco, we're not seeing or hearing you. If you're speaking, you're muted. If you could turn on your camera and mic.
Draco. It may be
No,
that
I'm on
Draco is not
a webcast.
Yeah, I see.
I'm not sure
here, but we're not hearing him. So, do we want to? Do we still want to try to get Draco on, or do we want to maybe have a speaker up and see if we can?
Let's go ahead and go to Gabby.
Yeah, I can jump in. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Gabby. I use she, her pronouns, and I convene the Missouri Immigration Policy Coalition, which is a coalition of about 20 organizations across the state of Missouri that are really sparking and building and nurturing the movement for migration justice in Missouri. So I was asked to come speak tonight about a specific bill in the Missouri legislature, but before I do that, I wanted to kind of put that bill into a little bit of context. So the United States has long recognized that immigration enforcement is an exclusive power of the federal government. However, since the onset of the COVID pandemic in 2020, we have experienced this surge of anti-immigrant legislation at the state levels. So really attempts across the country at the state level to step into the federal government shoes and do immigration enforcement. And Missouri has followed this track as well. We went from an average of 1 to 2 anti-immigrant bills each year in legislative session introduced to 21 bills last year, and we're on the same track this year. Legislative session started just a few weeks ago, and there's already 14 anti-immigrant bills that have been introduced. One of those bills is a bill that has gotten a lot of media attention, Senate Bill 72. So you may have heard of it before, but it creates a bounty hunter program, which would pay people $1,000 to turn in anyone that they think is here without papers. That is one provision of the bill. There's another provision that would create a new felony charge for just being in Missouri without papers. And that is punishable with life imprisonment. So it just criminalizes undocumented presence, which as of right now in the United States, mere undocumented presence in the absence of a previous removal order or unauthorized reentry is not a crime under federal law. So this bill would greatly expand mass incarceration in Missouri to accommodate all of the additional felony charges that would result. I also think it's really important to talk about the communities that we're trying to build, and I think most of us can agree that the communities that we dream of are rooted in deep trust in one another, deep trust in our neighbors. And this bill does the opposite of that. It exacerbates distrust among community members. And it really brings us back to dark periods in history of human betrayal. I also think it's important to mention the ways in which this would impact families. Currently, there are 36,312 Missourians with U.S. citizenship that live with undocumented family members. So bills like this one promote the cruel and inhumane practice of tearing families apart. I do want to share the positive news that this bill is currently making its way through the Senate, but it seems to have no appetite in the Missouri House. So that is a win. However, the Missouri House has said nothing about the 13 other anti-immigrant bills that have been proposed this year, which would also criminalize undocumented presence. And also, I wanted to mention that this bill has a replica in Mississippi that is also moving. And so we have to be aware of these things that are happening at the state and local level across the country. And I'll just like end before, giving a plug again for the Missouri Immigration Policy Coalition, that bills like these and the bills that we're seeing at the federal government are really a distraction from the real problems that we all are facing. They're an attempt to use this concept of public safety to pit us against one another. There's no nuance in these bills. There's no new ideas. It's just cruelty and chaos that's undergirded by racism. And so to fight back against these bills, I encourage you to join a local organization that is working on these. If you're in Missouri, follow the Missouri Immigration Policy Coalition. We have an advocacy day in Jefferson City in our capital on February 18th. This will be an opportunity to talk directly with your legislators about this issue and make sure that bills like these are not moving in our state. I will add the link to the chat to register for that. There is a registration fee, but there's also a code to bypass it. So I'll put the code in the chat as well. And then even if you're not in Missouri, or if you can't make it on February 18th, it's always, good to follow us on our newly created social media. We're kind of a scrappy group, but powerful. And so we just have created social media. So I'll put the links to follow us in the chat as well. But if anybody wants to brainstorm or has questions, or wants to figure out how you can uniquely contribute to this work, I'm always happy to grab coffee or join a Zoom call. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. This work is really going to take all of us now, and so happy to get creative with you on how you can uniquely join. And I see there may be some questions in the chat, so I will also hop in there.
Thank you very much, Gabby. So it looks like Draco's not going to be with us after all tonight. So María Elena Valdivia will speak on some federal legislation. Go ahead, María Elena.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry that Draco's having some technical difficulties. We're going to talk about the registry bill, HR 1511, which has been put in on it's already in Congress and supported by 85 Congress people, which it needs more support. The HR 1511, it's a bill that can benefit 8.5 million of undocumented migrants in the United States. It's a bill that it's asking to move the section 40, which states the date where an immigrant that came into the country illegal can be can apply for their green card. It is under the same current law, the immigration law. The HR 1511, it will provide not only the ability to give the green card or the legalization of 8.5 million people, but also, because what is happening is that if it passed, the people would be able to have this, if you are in the United States 7 years or more in the United States, of course, under the current law of immigration law, which states that you shouldn't have a criminal record, that you are a good citizen, that requires, with all the current requirements, then you can apply first for the employment authorization and then go ahead and do for the green card. Will that allow them in the future, if they want, to seek their citizenship? In HR 1511, we think that it can fix not only the system of the immigration, which is taking more than 20 years just for a petition of a family member, but also it will allow other people that it's not, for example, the 7-year period, but then later, then they can continue to get on the so-called line to get their documents ready. That's what the HR 1511, and we're asking everyone to support that, because we feel that if we get everyone legalized and their background check, everything, then the authorities know who everyone else is. The HR 3499, it is also a law that it's in Congress. I'm gonna see if we can send the link so you can have it. So you can have it on the chat as I'm speaking.
I'll just add that there's, I think it's known sometimes, or in some circles, as the Dignity Act, the 3499
Sorry, having trouble
is
with
also known as the Dignity Act.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my internet. So that's what I have to turn off my camera. Yeah, the Dignity Act, it is now in Congress, which is placed by by a Republican. But the Dignity Act, which it is there, and it seems like it's gaining support after the new president-elect Donald J. Trump. But with that, they are asking us to pay a fee every year, a fee plus the promise in that law, the Dignity Act, it is stating that we can keep paying that fee every year, so we can keep like giving our data and all our information, and then we can ask for permission so we can go back to our country to visit our family members. The problem with that law, it is that we never know for certain once you're out, even with a permit, that they will allow you to get in. Another thing with that, the Dignity Act bill is also that it's stating that part of the money that we're gonna gain through our work, it's a percentage of that money, it's gonna go to an unemployed U.S. citizen that they might get the offer, the position that you're also applying for, but because they didn't want that position, then you can have that position and be hired. But a percentage of that money that you're working hard, then it's gonna go towards the U.S. citizen that it's not interested on the position that you just hired. Another thing that we find on the Dignity Act is that it's stating that we're gonna get our residence card, like our green card, unless, I mean, up to when the south border, Mexico and United States, it is considered like a safe border. And in our history of the United States, the south, the border of the south with Mexico has never been pronounced as a safe border. So there's a lot of difficulties and a lot of things that they have to work with that particular bill with the Dignity Act. We have spoken with the congresswoman, but still they wanted to push it the way it is. Some support this bill because it's nothing else for the millions of undocumented people here, and a lot of us are not able yet after 20 years to go and visit our family members over there. A lot of us just have lost all our families already, and we never got the chance to see them. So when we talk about the Dignity Act, of course, it's something, and we can see and we can have the hope to unite with our family members. But we never have the 100% certain that we're going to be able to come back. And I'm sorry that I keep my camera off, but my internet, it's not good.
Okay. Well, great job, Maria Elena, stepping in there at the last moment. And so if there are, some people are starting to have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We ask that you put in all caps above question so that we can find them more easily. And then I'm going to ask now, Maria Elena, if you will introduce our next two panelists.
Okay, yes. First, I'm going to introduce Jorden. Jorden Giger. He is a South Bend, Indiana native and a co-founder of Black Lives Matter, South Bend, and Redes Negras por la Paz y la Justicia, the latter of which is an international network of Black-led organizations in the Americas and the Caribbean. He worked as an educator in his community and previously served as the director of outreach for Black Lives Matters grassroots. Jorden has spent his adult supporting and advocating for immigrant communities, including supporting efforts to stop the construction of a detention center in his community, connecting migrants with legal resources and advocating for the passage of resolutions to prevent local authorities from work with ICE and other federal and local policing agencies. And I also present you Marco Castillo. He is the co-executive director of Global Exchange, a nonprofit promoting human rights and social, economic, and environmental justice around the world. He is spearheading the People's Movement for Peace and Justice, an alliance of more than 100 grassroots organizations in Mexico and in the U.S.
Hello, thank you very much. I think if I can, I'm gonna let Marco go first, and then I will follow him.
Okay, Jorden. Marco, are you ready?
Sure, I'm here.
Yes, please go
Yeah.
ahead, Marco Castillo.
Yeah, happy to be here. I don't see myself, I only see Jorden. There you go. How are you doing, everybody? Good night. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's very important in this moment to, take every opportunity possible to come together to expand our networks of friendship, solidarity, and rebuild our social movements to be able to overcome what's in front of us. So thank you, María, for the introduction. My name is Marco Castillo, co-executive director of Global Exchange. You can learn more about the work of Global Exchange on globalexchange.org. And I was asked this evening to share with you very briefly the contributions of immigrants to the U.S. economy. And for that, I will be using the latest report from the Migration Policy Institute, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that, every year, or they're permanently producing analysis and reports on facts and statistics on immigration. If I may, I would like to share a couple of slides if possible. Not right now, but I will. So I would start by saying that, just give me 1 second. There you go. That the question of whether immigrants represent a net cost or a net benefit to U.S. economy has been a major source of contention, even as the research literature and thinking among most economists has been quite clear. Sorting throughout the full, economic and fiscal impacts of immigration, it's complicated, but a strong body of research and consensus by most economists finds that immigration on balance is a net positive for the U.S. economy. But despite this fact, the public debate, particularly in the last years, continue the debate around the economic impacts, with some people, highlighting immigrants' contributions to the economy, while others underscore the apparent cost of immigration, including education, healthcare, and other costs to governments. But to be more specific, I would say that research clearly shows that immigrants boost overall economic growth by expanding the labor force and increasing consumer spending. The foreign-born also start new businesses at higher rates than U.S.-born individuals. Approximately 40% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants. Higher than expected immigration is driving job growth and productivity and is projected to continue doing so in the coming years. The CBO, or the Congressional Budget Office of the United States, estimates that the greater level of immigration expected between this year, 2025, and 2034 will boost the gross domestic product, or GDP, by 8.9 trillion. Obviously, this projection was made before Trump took office. And if I may share my screen, I would just very quickly share with you this graphic that shows how in this projection that I'm speaking between 2024 and 2034, in the next decade, we're going to see an increase in revenues for the U.S. economy and a decrease in deficit. This is how the economy is projecting to grow based on the growth of immigration, which depends on a lot on this administration. To address another important questions that always comes up when we talk about this is, do immigrants contribute more than what they cost? And the answer is very clear. Immigrants contribute more than what they cost. While immigrants, like US-born individuals, cost government money for services such as public education, healthcare, basic infrastructure such as the sewage or roads or public benefits, they also pay into government budgets through sales tax, property tax, either directly as homeowners or indirectly, and through payroll deductions, taxes on income, as well as what they pay for Medicare or Social Security. Even unauthorized immigrants, who lack work authorization, pay these taxes on top of sales and property taxes, because many work on the books using fake Social Security numbers or one belonging to another worker, and they as such they end up paying payroll taxes. So on balance, do immigrants' contributions exceed the government spending? At the federal level, immigrants pay more in taxes than what they use in government service and benefits, according to a landmark report by the National Academy of Science and other studies. The picture is a little different at the state and local level, where immigrants could tend to cost local governments more than what they pay in, primarily due to the cost of children's schooling. And to address another question that it's important is, do immigrants take jobs from U.S. workers? Immigration skeptics have charged that immigrants take jobs from U.S. born, in particular Black workers, but the evidence demonstrates that immigrants have taken a larger slice of a growing jobs pie over the recent decades rather than displacing American workers. The number of U.S. jobs is not fixed. In addition to filling jobs, immigrants also foster job growth by consuming goods and services by starting businesses. I would like also to show one last graphic regarding the level of education among employed workers, and you can see that immigrants are working mostly on works that require less than high school diploma, and on highly specialized jobs that require a graduate degree. Everything else is mostly taken by US born. And so in this section on the first graphic, or to the left, you can see that in among workers with less than high school diploma. That's where there might be, some job fighting. And but in general, the truth is that most of the U.S. population is located among the other, and so in general, it is pretty clear that immigrants are not taking jobs from U.S. workers. I'm gonna put here in the chat some sources for you to check if you want to know more about this, and happy to respond to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marco. It's a very interesting when we actually see the numbers, right? And that, like, debacles, all the talking points that they have against the migrant community.
Correct. Donald Trump has used a false narrative and has feed up on people's fears that new immigrants coming in will be taking jobs from U.S. born, and that's far from being truth, as well as another topic which is related to crime, and both are just based on false narrative spread on media and capitalized by Donald Trump, but in reality, data shows the opposite.
Yeah, thank you for all the important information that you just shared with us.
Of course.
Jorden, are you ready?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. My name is Jordan Geiger. I'm a founding member of Black Lives Matter South Bend, and I don't really have a statistical approach to how we talk about the issues. I'll say that if you just do a basic search, you know that people who live in the United States who are not born here commit less crimes. I think probably everyone knows that, right? Uh, the problem is that there's racism, there's genocide, and that Donald Trump and the white supremacists have created this perception that brown people, black people, because black people are also Latino, black people also are immigrants. There is this perception that we create crime and that we are uh, that we're hurting other individuals, other peoples in various ways, right? But we know that that's not really true. So, uh, from my point, I think Marco presented data about the economy and how Latino immigrants or immigrants in general support the economy and advance the interests of like the U.S. empire. But what I really want to focus on is the fact that we, as peoples, that we need to have greater conversation with each other because we live with each other. I come from a community that is, they say, maybe 80% Black, African American, African American. I want to be specific, African American, and 20 something percent Latino. I think it's more than that. It's very blended, and the dynamics are not really understood. We have to come together as peoples who have been colonized formerly and currently. which I think we're all currently colonized, even in Mexico, because we have to have a common agenda about how we move forward and how we advance our interests. Unfortunately, we're not really there yet. And I feel that we can be there if deeper conversation about education, lack of education, understanding literacy as white people. The economy, which means that, like, how can we create businesses that benefit the local economy that is registered with white people? I think that, as we think about like socially within our communities, how can we better make sure that our social centers or our recreational centers serve the interests of our community? There's so many battles that we deal with recreationally, socially, politically, economically that inhibit us because we struggle with how we can relate to each other as people of color. In my own experience, and I want to be honest, I know you all probably expecting. Well, they told me that I need to talk about crime statistics again, as I mentioned, that Black people and Indigenous people and Latin American people, we commit less crimes than white people. We know that, that, that is the case. Specifically, when with communities, that's where missing the gap comes to how they react to us criminality. Okay, so I was trying to speak slow. I'm gonna speak a little bit faster. My uncle is from Honduras. My community, a lot of my family, and a lot of people I'm around are, um, have compromised documentation. And my whole life, that has been the case. My whole life, since I've been young, people have been I remember being a kid, country is on immigrant labor. And in my life, I have progressed and understood like how Afro Latinos and people of African descent have contributed to this economy and to this world, right? Because more of us, more Black people actually live in Latin America than any place in the world. But there's no conversation about that. And I've been reminded by people who look like me, who speak Spanish and who are Latino, that we have a responsibility to fight for them and to understand what their struggles are and to realize that the criminality, the perception of criminality does not stop with, are you African American? It extends to, are you Black? Because I see that. I see that in Latin America. I see that with my friends who are Black and Latino who live in different parts of Latin America. And I want to make sure that I specifically support those causes. So for me, it's about how we bring African Americans who are anti immigrant, who don't feel that, who feel that immigrants are taking everything from them, how we bridge those gaps. And I think how we bridge those gaps is amplifying Afro Latino voices, Black voices from Latin America and the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, because it's very important because they are Black people and we see them as Black people. But those voices aren't being amplified as they should. So for me, that is what's most important. I don't want to talk about criminality because we know criminality among immigrants is low because people want to stay in the country. I mean, I've been all over Mexico. I've been to different Latin American countries. Nobody wants to get arrested. Nobody wants to create problems, yada, yada, yada. You know, they people want to live dignified lives, right? Like, so we know the criminality is going to be low. And we know that in the United States that when you are non-white, they're going to criminalize you. We know that from history. They've deported people who were living in the United States, so-called legally, and they deported them because they were Mexican. We know that that's the history. We know that. But, and that's happening right now. We know that. We see that that's happening right now, right? And we don't have the mechanisms of power to counteract that. But
Jorden, you have 1 minute.
yeah, 1 minute. Yeah. But what we do know is that we can try to bring communities together to support each other through differences. So that's what I want to support is how do we do that? How do we bring Black or African American, more specifically, communities together and immigrant communities from Latin America or the Caribbean together to support each other because that's very important.
Thank you, Jorden.
Thank you. And now I want to introduce our final panelist. Santiago Juárez has practiced law for more than 4 decades in the areas of immigration, human rights, and criminal law. He has been known for his advocacy since early in his career when he helped Latin American war refugees start new lives in the USA and is admired for his respectful treatment of others. Mr. Juárez.
Thank you. I'll try to be short because a lot of organizations are trying to put responses to what's going on in their communities out there. 2 organizations that I belong to, that I'm very proud to belong to, are the National Lawyers Guild National Immigration Project and Clinic. You can get information from community resources from them. It's nlgnip.org, and Clinic is spelled just like clinic.org. They provide a lot of resources on immigrant rights and what we can do. The Constitution is very important for us to look at where we start the conversation. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That means any person within the territorial, bounds of the United States, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, are entitled to due process of law. That means you have constitutional rights. It's difficult at times for us to exercise them when you have a big, bully, green person dressed in green suit and armor and everything else to know you have rights. But you have them. And we have to understand this. Right now, the process is resist, resist, resist. Not physically, do not run, do not, in that sense, don't do that. If you have the right to remain silent, you have the right, if somebody comes up to you and asks you questions, to say, am I free to leave? Am I under arrest? Am I free to leave? Am I under arrest?
Yeah. Can
You
I ask a
leave.
question? Can I ask a question?
I guess so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lo siento.
No, go ahead. Go
But
ahead. I'm not the moderator, but
how do we communicate that to our people? How do we can pass out cards, we can well, I go door to door, right? Like we can go door to door. But how do we get our people to understand that when the white man is standing at your door and he's got a badge and he's with ICE and he's with whatever agency, how do we get them to understand that you can stand your ground and exercise your rights?
the
Because a
only
lot of
thing you
people
can do,
don't
yeah, but
feel that.
the only thing you can do is educate people. The only thing you can do is educate people. People can get in front of their mirror and practice the idea. Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? When they knock on your door, do you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant? You know, we
Right.
forget that a lot of the immigrant families that we're talking about, a lot of their children speak English. We're not talking
Yeah,
about people
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I mean, I'm speaking for my community. The parents really control a lot, right? So how do we get those parents to to know that it's
community
okay
organizations
to
need to get
refuse, it's
involved to
okay to fight
educate.
back, it's okay to say no?
Well, yeah, that's like
Yeah.
Nancy Reagan said,
Well,
just say
yeah.
no.
Yeah. I
You
appreciate
know what
that.
I mean?
Thank you.
But the
I'm
fact of the
sorry.
matter
Yeah.
is that,
I agree with you. Yeah.
you have to community, especially community organizers, people who are there in the community who are doing community organizations, they can have meetings, and our people will be afraid to come together now. But we can pass out leaflets, we can put them in the language that our communities speak, and just try to get them to start to resist. Because once one starts to resist, once one knows they can do it, then others will know they can do it. When they knock on your door, and they announce who they are, you ask if they got a warrant. They say, yes, we do. You tell them, slip it underneath the door. Slip it underneath the door or put it against the window so I can see it.
Yeah.
And then they have to become educated. You have to tell them
Yeah.
that an administrative warrant does not allow them into your house.
Yeah.
It has to say
That
something
is
like a
easier
court.
said than done. And I agree with I agree with you. But we have to make sure people understand that, because in Latin America, from
Well,
what
I
I've
think
seen
that's
out,
one of the things we're trying to do now. Like these kinds of forums, you make them local. All politics are
yeah,
local.
this is not
All
local to
politics,
me. This is
Maybe,
not local.
Can we please
yeah,
let
please.
the
I'm
attorney
sorry. I
finish his
apologize. Yeah.
presentation? Because then here is more like a debate rather than.
but the thing
Thank
is
you.
this, is that there is a constitution. As much as it's been torn apart, people do have rights. Undocumented folks have rights. They have rights. They have to do things to protect themselves right now. One is you learn to resist. You work with people, you teach them to resist. Teach your neighbor, teach your friends, teach each other how you resist, and what your rights are. And I know it's easier said than done. I've faced it all my life. I'm 76 years old. I've been doing this for over 50 years. I know it's not easy. But if we do not reach out to our communities and try to do it, then we fail our obligations to each other. Teach them, talk to them, have them do powers of attorney for their children, so somebody can look after their children if they're picked up, so somebody can go get their paycheck if they're picked up, so somebody can go get their car if they're picked up, so somebody can take care of their family when they're here. Have them do powers of attorney for folks that they trust, so those things can't happen. We started doing this back in the 70s when they were deporting farm workers for going on strike, and the farm workers wouldn't pay them. We would get powers of attorney so that people could get their money, powers of attorney so they could get their bank accounts, powers of attorney so somebody could take their children so they wouldn't be put in custody of CYFD or other sorts of agencies. Our people have to learn, and they know that they have to resist. They know that it's an inherent thing that they know at this moment they have to resist. And I don't think that They do not have the courage. Some of our people who are here have gone through this in their own countries that they come from, and they've gone through worse than that. So they do know how to resist. They do know how it is when somebody approaches them unlawfully. What we've got to do is remind them that their rights here, just because they're undocumented, doesn't mean they're not a person under the Constitution. And they have all those rights that apply to them under the Constitution. Don't sign anything if you believe that you have some way of staying legally in this country. Don't sign anything. Somebody will get to you. Don't use false names. If you give a name, give them your real name. Because if you give them a false name, what's going to happen is going to be much more difficult for people to find you. So you give them a real name. If you feel obligated to give them a name, you give them a name. And you give them a real name so people can get to you. So if your family goes to see one of the agencies that's out there helping, they will give them your full name and they will be able to help you. These things become important. Have your legal documents, whatever documents you have that do with your bank account, that do with your car ownership, that do with anything that you've been doing. Have them in a safe place where somebody can readily get to them so that you can use them if you have to in the near future, if you get picked up. But the main thing right now is our communities have to resist. And when I say resist, like I said, that doesn't mean run. That doesn't mean fight. What it means is passive resistance. It means exercise your rights.
I just want to say that I agree with you 100%. I'm not undocumented.
I'm sorry, this is the timekeeper, Santiago.
Jorden, Jorden, please respect Mr. Juárez's time.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just
come on. Mr. Juárez, you have 1 minute left. I'm going to give you an extra minute because some of your talk got taken up by debate. So you have 2 minutes.
I think I've said what I need to say, and that is, resistance is a process, that doesn't involve violence. It doesn't involve running. Those things, if you run, then they can say, that was suspicious activity, then they can detain you. If you stand there and just repeat to them, am I free to go? Am I under arrest? I once told somebody, when a police officer approaches me and asks me the time of day, I tell them, am I under arrest or am I free to go? And some people have thought that's funny, but I told him, what, if I tell him the wrong time, he will then say that the reason he stopped me or confronted me is I appeared to be disoriented because he asked me for the time of day and I told him the wrong time of day. You do not have to answer questions unless they have a warrant, an administrative warrant for your arrest. You don't have to answer a question. You are free to ask the question once you're confronted is, am I free to leave? Am I under arrest? And they will be what they will be, and if they arrest you illegally, unlawfully, then, maybe we have a fight, maybe we have a chance. But a lot of times, if you do that, if our people do that, they'll walk away. They will walk away because they know that, you have created a situation for them that will become intolerable for them in court or in administrative hearings. And I think our communities have got to come together and talk about things like what's going to happen. I mean, it's a terrible thing to talk about, but do we have powers of attorney? Do we need powers of attorney? Who do we give those powers of attorney to so that our children are safe if we're taken away? So our belongings are safe if they're taken away. So our legal documents are safe if we're taken away. All those things need to be considered at this moment because it's happening. It's happening. I have people who, I could go on and tell stories, but I don't want to. Look at those resources. Look at clinic.org. Look at National Lawyers Guild, NIP. Look at your local, and a lot of those organizations are local. We have a lot of local affiliates. We have a local, look, ACLU. Look at, other kinds of organizations that are already out there. The Navajo Nation is already putting out Know Your Rights in the Dene Nation. They've already put out Know Your Rights. We have Mescaleros who are putting out Know Your Rights. So these communities are coming together and there are resources out there. We just have to look at them and find them and help our folks get to them.
Santiago, your time is up, but thank you. Great information.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the panelists portion has been complete, and we do have 6 individuals who have been designated to give up to a 2-minute statement, and Maria Elena is going to read those in order, just one at a time.
Lily Benavides from Latinx Caucus, Jennifer Sullivan from Florida Gabriel, Medina from California, Martha Stiles from Utah, Mark Dunlea from New York, and Luke Adams from St. Louis.
Go ahead, Lily Benavides.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
We hear you.
Okay. I am Lily Benavides. I am a co-chair of the Latinx Caucus, and I am a member of Green Party of New Jersey as well. I'm just going to go through my statement. I'll read it so I won't forget anything. Okay. For the Latinx Caucus, it's very important, extremely important that we have these conversations and be prepared so we learn how to support our undocumented brothers and sisters. The Trump administration is clearly trying to comply with his commitment to get rid of immigrants, undocumented or not, to save white supremacy. We, people of color, are all in danger, and that's why we need to unite our efforts and work together now more than ever. In our numbers, it's our strength. We invite all to join immigrant rights groups and allies to fight this fight. The Green Party of the United States, under its platform, in our second pillar, social justice, under civil rights and equal rights, and where the second point is titled, Path to Citizenship, says, when the government has the power to deny legal rights and due process to one vulnerable group, everyone's rights are at risk. We must end xenophobia and white supremacy to address laws and practices that punish and target individuals for their immigration status. Excuse me?
30 more seconds.
Oh. Okay. Our goal is for the many diverse immigrant communities to possess truth and freedom and equality. And then after that point, they talk about a policy reform, which is very comprehensive, and we all should read it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lily.
You're welcome.
It's Jennifer Sullivan here. No, Gabriel Medina.
Jennifer's on. Jennifer, if you can unmute and turn your video on.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Okay. Hi. Here's my video.
Hi, welcome,
Hi.
Jennifer.
All right. Well, I think that it's important that people stay informed, like Santiago said, and also, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. It's very wise to keep your ID on you and be identified, like you said, who you are. I don't, in Florida, the Green Party here is 100% on your side, wherever we can do to help. And we do have, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's been a very successful group you may know about them. It's the Immokalee Workers, Coalition of Immokalee Workers, CIW. You can look them up online and communicate with them. They may have some, help for you on some things. And it's just, sadly, it's a bad situation, but we got to stay strong and stay united. And that is the strongest thing we have going for us, is the fact that there's more of us than a lot of other people, because of like the wealthy people. So, the oligarchs and so on. So we just need to form a coalition with each other and get behind a party that's going to stay on your side. And I've been to Cuba, Venezuela, and lots of Latin America, and people have been going through this forever. It's the United States, I think, is continuing down this path that the rest of the world is resisting. And I don't know how much longer the United States can keep it up. So really, that's all I have to say, is just encourage you to hang in there. And I think at some point, the United States is going to go too far with the rest of the world. I don't know when, but this could be it. Over. Good night. And take care, everybody. See you in Seattle if anyone's going up there. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Gabriel Medina. Is he around here?
Don't see Gabrielle. If you're on under another name, let us know. Otherwise, I think no.
Matt Styles.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, I'm with the Green Party of Utah here, and my brother actually works for an immigration law firm, and it's absolutely heartbreaking to hear the challenges that the migrant community are going through right now. One of the particularly tragic of these challenges is labor trafficking, where employers will use the undocumented status of migrants to extort and compel them to work for little to no pay and with no kind of safe working conditions or anything like that. This is particularly an issue that is rampant in many parts here in the state of Utah. But the problem is it just goes on behind the scenes, in the shadows, because the business owners and the capitalists, they benefit obviously from exploiting these workers. So just what I would love for us to think about, or for us to figure out as a party, is what are some things that we could do, some changes that we can make to support those who are currently victimized by this practice, and prevent others from becoming victims.
You have 30 more seconds.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Martin Leah.
Don't see Mark on. Unless you're under another name, then let us know.
Luke Adams.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Luke. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Luke Adams. My father had to give up his Brazilian citizenship and become an American citizen when I was 5 years old. And for the first 5 years of my life, ICE was my greatest boogeyman. This is what I've been terrified of for my entire life. I'm as white as the wall behind me, so I'm not as faced by it. But we've been mobilizing against this horror in St. Louis and in my home county of Jefferson County. We've been I was at a protest today outside of the Capitol building in St. Louis, not the capital of Missouri. And the main thing that we've been doing, though, myself and the other members of the organization I co-founded, Community Liberation Network, is teaching people around us in rural Missouri that immigrants are not the reason why things are getting worse. For the past 4 years, we've had what we call People's Potluck, which is a program working with homeless people and just poor people in general to get food and resources and out to the community. And in doing so, we've been able to talk to people about everything from like Palestine, trans people, and now immigration mostly. So we've been everybody, whether it's like, poor Black people, poor white people, those are the main groups of people we have. But we've just been systematically trying to explain to people that the economic problem is capitalism, that it's not immigration, that whether it's NAFTA or imperialism or whatever, that the US has been destabilizing these other countries, and that what we need to do is unite with people of Latin America.
30 more seconds, Luke.
I'm sorry, my apologies, man. Thank you, though. Sorry, but yeah, I mean, our primary function has both been to organize protests against ICE in St. Louis and to teach people in rural Missouri that immigration is not the problem. So if you can work through charities and whatnot to teach poor people that immigrants aren't the problem, I'd highly recommend doing that if you live in a rural area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Luke.
Okay, great, thanks. And so now we do have some open Q&A when we've collected questions. I hope we still have our panelists. I'll just kind of go right to one of the questions about denial of due process for legal immigrants on temporary protected status or parole. And some of them are receiving notices that they'll be removed prior to the amount of time, sooner than their time is supposed to be up. Is there anyone who can say something about that in a minute or two?
The only thing I would say is that anybody who is facing any kind of notice must immediately try, if they can, to get to somebody's legal office. That's the most important thing, because we have to understand the nature of the letter, the nature of how you are here, and what equities you have here that could have changed your status. There's a lot of questions that have to be asked. And the first thing to do is immediately try to find legal advice. Immediately, go to ACLU, go to local organizations that maybe can direct you to some free legal advice. Don't rely on what the letter says in and of itself.
Okay. Is there anyone else on the panel who has another comment on that?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay.
Because if freezes up my computer.
Temporary protected status. Okay. Yeah, I think there's something in the air messing with all the transmissions. I don't know. So let's go on to a different one. I thought there was one in here. There are kind of some different questions here that I'm going to kind of put all together, and we can get more input from the panelists. And it was kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, but addressing potential conflicts between groups, like over resources, and talked about the various groups who may live in the same locale. And I'll just give a specific example of housing. Like, how do you address conflict if, some immigrants come into a city or take into a city, and the city or the state, provides housing for the immigrants when there are already so many unhoused people in that city or state? And like, how do you address the conflicts that arise from that over resources and get past things like that so that we all can work together? Are there any comments on that from the panelists?
Well, I hope it doesn't freeze again. For people to get provide with housing, it is because they come and applied for an asylum, which is different of any other type of like visas or stuff. So they have to apply for asylum. So if the immigration believes that they have a good story, then they can come, and sometimes they provide housing. How immigration, it's a federal case or place. And now states have been the ones that are consuming the resources, and that's why many people are so unhappy. So if they keep clearly the budget they have for shelters for asylum seekers, that can change the whole thing. But what has happened that, as usual, migrants become a political game for everyone. And that's what we have seen in the past years since 2018. If another red state wants to make another state uncomfortable, what they do is spend the money that we have funds that are allocated to other places or goods or services, and they rather spend that money to grab a plane and put all the migrants to a state that they want to like get there, like the sanctuary state or a blue state. So in my opinion, it's, if we want to fix this, they have to stop politicizing as human beings. Stop playing games and put the budget exactly for what it is. There's a budget that they have to allocate for asylum seekers, and then another budget for regular housing for homeless people.
Thank you, Maria.
So, any other panelist who wants to comment on that? Okay, we'll go to the next question. So how many people have been illegally deported thus far? And how difficult is it to find them and secure justice for them? You have anyone who wants to take a stab at that? I guess finding people lost in the system. How do you do that?
So, can I again? That's what is a much needed reform needs to be done. I cannot believe that the most powerful country of the world, with all the sophistication that we have electronically, they're still claiming that they cannot find people. What I care the most, honestly, it's about little children, that I'm still lost. They're still lost somewhere, that we have no clue where they are. We have no clue who they released them to. And not long ago, we find some people, some young people underage, working as any other regular adult, underpaid and with all the risks. When it comes to adults, well, the system needs to be reformed. And I'm sorry if I don't have a better, like, suggestion for how do we find people.
Little aspect to that, maybe Santiago, Mr. Juárez, in terms of finding people lost in the system?
You know, that gets to be very difficult because they move people around so fast and they move them to different places. The only there are resources online, but they're, like I said, they'll be very limited. There's a immigration locator. You have to have certain specific information to put in that to find where that person's at. But if they're not input into the system, then you can't find them. People in court, you can usually find those on the on the website because, well, you won't find where they're at. You're going to find out when their next court hearing is. You might be able to do if you have their A number, but it's very difficult to do that. That's why we tell people, make sure that you carry with you somebody's phone number where you can call and make sure that they know that they can accept collect calls, because that's what's going to happen. The best way to locate somebody is for them to call you, and they will at times get opportunities to call you, maybe not as often as one should. And it's just really a big battle right now, and I don't believe there's any good answer other than rely on making sure, like I said earlier, that people give the correct information, because giving the correct information, of course, allows us to find you a lot quicker. Calling the local immigration officers with the right information might help us locate people. At times they're more willing to give service organizations information because looking to represent people. That's the only thing I can say. It's very, very difficult, and even as attorneys, we have trouble doing it sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions here. We may be able to get 2 or 3 more in. So Miriam, I think you had a question that didn't fit in the chat. Can you try to take less than a minute to ask it, please?
Hello, my name is Miriam Shiro. I'm with the Green Party of Denver, Colorado. And so my question is, so the indigenous tribes and the Mexicans, they are both Native Americans of America. And so they were both. I don't know why history does not talk about that the Mexicans were also tortured and tormented and abused and beaten and lynched and killed, and ethnic cleansed from America. Why isn't anybody talking about that? I had to hear that from an old Mexican. He's like in his 80s, and he was telling me all this history about the truth of America. That half of America belongs to the Mexicans, half of it belongs to the tribal people of America, and half belongs to Mexicans. Now the tribal, they are considered citizens and they get reparation, but the Mexicans, they outcast them and call them immigrants and not citizens, and they don't give them reparation. So why is that? Why isn't this education being taught in school, being taught to everyone about the truth, about the history of the violence and the torture and torment that they put these Mexicans through to take their land away? I mean, half of America, it does belong to the Mexican. If the native tribal is considered citizen, why aren't they considered citizen? And if the tribal get reparation, why don't they get reparation?
I'm sorry, but your time is up for the question.
Okay, I finished my question.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the question in summary was about reparations.
And citizenship.
And maybe that could relate back to reparations, citizenship,
yes.
treaties.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone on the panel who can address that?
Well,
I'll say as a Mexican, and as Santiago, this country's never respected any treaty. Not the treaty with Mexico of 1848, when the war of aggression against Mexico, imperialist war against Mexico, was started by the United States, in which they took over all the Western states, and Western states now of the United States. They never respected that treaty. They never respected treaties with any indigenous peoples. I mean, that's just the fact. We're living under a system right now with people right now in power who believe that to the victors goes the spoils. And that's the attitude. And that's the mindset. And, we took it, it's ours, and we got it. And we're going to keep it. That's the mindset that's in this country today. It's a mindset of privilege. And it has been here for many, many years. So the questions, sometimes are rhetorical in the sense because we know the answers. We've lived the answers. And, until we need to tell our own stories to each other. We need to build our own truths for each other. And as everybody has said on this panel, we need to build each other up and share these truths. They're not going to be shared by those who are in power. They feel no obligation to do so. And in fact, they're taking it away. I mean, come on. Gulf of America?
That doesn't answer my question. I want to know why they consider them immigrants, but the tribal of America is called citizen. Why they call you Mexicans immigrants when they're native of America, but they call the other tribal race citizen. Why does the other tribal race get reparation, but the Mexicans that are also native of America, they don't?
Okay.
That's my question.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Why?
All right.
Right.
Well, I think it goes back to not respecting the treaties that existed. Like in New Mexico, there's the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and land rights that are historical. And I mean, that could get really complicated to talk about it, but I think it's part of our economic system in wanting to exploit land and air and water for profit for some people, and it's just a bad situation all around. So I'm not sure we can quite get that. We have a couple more questions I want to try to get in here. What do we do if ICE shows up at vigils to free Palestine?
Repeat that question.
What do we do if ICE shows up at demonstrations or rallies or vigils to free Palestine or some other public rally?
We've had that happen already. And it's just the same thing. I mean, people have got to, not give the authorities any reason that they can articulate to arrest them. They'll make up their own reasons, I know that, but do not exacerbate that situation by giving them reasons to do so. Passive resistance, in the terms of saying, am I under arrest? Am I free to leave? Am I under arrest? Am I free to leave? Do not confront them because then, again, you exacerbate a situation that they're already there, that they know that they're going to act on. And we just have to use common sense when we're dealing with these people to try not to exacerbate the situations in which they come into our communities, but help our communities develop a powerful passive resistance to this that we can hold on to for as long as we can. It's going to hurt. And some of us aren't going to make it.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if we can get another question in here.
I think Gabby might have had a response to that too.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gabby.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Santiago said. I would also add just to have, if the area you're in has a rapid response line, to have that handy for whenever ICE does show up at a place, because then you'll be able to get trained people on the scene who can coach you what your rights are And so, yeah, just having, if you're in the St. Louis area, there's a St. Louis ICE rapid response line, and in many other localities across the country. So be good to look up that number if you don't already know it.
Another great big add-on is this. You have allies who have folks who are members of the National Lawyers Guild, who we always have volunteers who are willing to go as observers to demonstrations. Also, ACLU and other organizations are trained to have lawyers who are observers who can be there and, help people along when these issues come up. So, I mean, try to find your allies who might have connections to some of those legal resources and and work with those legal resources to have observers on ground when these things are going down.
Okay. Thank you. So just to follow up on that a little bit in the rapid response, does anyone have any thoughts on using systems like Signal or different text trees or mechanisms? And do you have a comment on how important, is it better to keep those closely held to trusted individuals or widely dispersed? I guess the question perhaps wasn't well understood, or no one has an opinion.
No, it's not that. It's that when you're working with local organizations who are, developing manifestations and stuff, a lot of those organizations will have their own internal trainings. And when anybody's going to go to a manifestation, it should be important for them, if they see what organization is putting on that manifestation, to ask if they're having any trainings for people to know how to react, to know how to do what they're going to do, to know who to contact with if they're arrested or anything like that. A lot of the localization organizations that have these manifestations have that kind of training. My suggestion is, if you're going to go to a manifestation or you're going to participate in one, look at who the organizers are, see what the kind of a plan they have, make sure they have a plan, and go to their training so you know exactly what they're expecting of you if these situations develop.
Okay, thank you. And it's time for us to close. So I want to try to finish on I'm going to try to combine a couple more. And I'm sorry if we didn't get everyone's question, but there are a couple about like how to bring people together and some sort of truth and reconciliation process. Like, is there a way that could apply here? Does any panelists have thoughts on those before we close?
It's Santiago. I've been speaking too much tonight, but I'll say one thing. Local house parties, and I'm not talking about parties, but local gatherings at people's houses that are intimate and safe are the best way to talk about these situations, and making sure that ground rules are established when the conversations start as to how we're going to react to each other during these conversations, because all of these discussions that we have are very, very emotional. They're very intimate to us. So the more intimate the situation that we can create, the more safe environments to talk that we can create, the better off we are. Speaking with friends in your house or in their house, and having their support around them is the easiest way to breach these subjects and reduce the tension that normally come around from these kinds of conversations.
Thank you. Any other input from any other panelists? And I think we're going to close it after that.
I think we had one more, if there's time for Matt's question from before.
Okay. Uh,
How can we help migrant workers who are being exploited
helping
behind the
workers
scenes?
behind the scenes. Oh, yeah, being exploited behind the scenes. Yeah, like, illegal hours in a slaughterhouse or child labor or something like that. How do we help those folks?
Okay, so can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
Please. Go ahead, Maria. Elena.
It is an everyday battle to get first to find out who is the one who has been exploited, because what, like, for us advocates, we go around and trying to find out who is the workers who are has been exploited, and when we find them, it's we have to be in a way careful. Um, First, we have to build the trust and the workers on what we do, how we behave, and who we report to. Sometimes we have to report those issues anonymously, because when they report what's happening, we have to report it to the Department of Labor. And even though sometimes they don't want to get in trouble, as they say, especially for workers who are in a small community, because then no one else wants to hire them. So it's a pretty tough situation that they are in, and that's why we have to be very careful when we find these workers. And how can we prevent them? Well, we can prevent this by just more uh, education, talking about the rights, being in the community, advocating, talking to everyone. It's not an easy task, but it's the way to build trust in the communities where workers can come and let us know what's going on so we can actually do something for them. Um, it's really, in this time, it's really hard, and we've seen that every day more and more. Um, like, companies seems to be dehumanized. The HR offices don't seem to be human resources anymore. They are acting as slave owners, where they, rather than protect the rights of the workers and just focus probably on the production that they have to get every day, they are focused on how can they get more money out of the workers' well-being. And they
Yeah,
do that with minors as well. They pretend they don't know that they are not adults. They underpay them. Um, exactly. HR exists to protect the corporation. Exactly. So
right.
this is the only way we can prevent him.
30
Keep the word
seconds.
out.
This is Santiago. I want to say one other thing about organizing, and I talked about the house parties. The other thing is that we have to understand a lot of our families are blended families. That means some of the kids, are U.S. citizens, and if we focus on helping, and the parents listen to their children a lot because they know that their children are out there. They know that they speak English. They know that they're being interacting. So sometimes if we focus our efforts on some of the younger folks, to try to get them, because they will feel safer because, they're not facing an immediate situation, but they know that they're facing an immediate situation with other people in their houses, focusing on them and getting them to some of these meetings where they feel a little bit more secure. The parents might come, but the young guys can come, the young girls can come, and they can learn and they can take that message home. So it's not We can't just look at this as one monolithic community that's undocumented. It's a blended community. And if we work with those who feel safe and try to educate them as well, then they can take that message home, and they take it home in a very more safe environment. And I really thank you all for trying this effort tonight, because it's these efforts that will save some lives. Not all, but we will save some.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all the time that you've spent with us. And Gabby was there. Did you have a comment on this before we close, or any of the other panelists?
No, just want to thank you for inviting me to this important conversation. Yeah, and thank you all for being here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close it. We've run over a little bit, but I think it was a healthy discussion, and I appreciate everyone's attendance and patience, and wish everyone well. Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
And sorry for the
Good night,
internet
everyone.
interruptions.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah. I think there was, I was having connection issues too. I kept getting these bandwidth warnings,
Yeah.
and that's kind of unusual. So,
Yeah, mine
night,
froze up
everyone.
when I
Night.
turned the camera on.
Yeah.
So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for talking about this much needed information. So I appreciate that as a Mexican, as a migrant, as someone that came to this country and I entered illegally. The situation that we live in our countries is not that we just come for fun. So I appreciate everyone for their advocacy, for their support, and everything that you guys do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks. So I guess either Joe or Lauren can officially end the meeting.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Mm,
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye.